Alright, we have a chicken dragon and... Yeah, okay. It is Tuesday on Raid Shadowlet. Hang on. Tuesday? That means Clan vs. Clan is on. What are you doing watching this? Get back to work, slave. What are you doing? Whatever. So, Legate Teox. He's great, isn't he? What? You don't have him? Just pull him. What's wrong with you? You can't? He's not in the summon pool? No, of course he's in the summon pool. Look, you can get him right here. Like... Okay, I guess you can't. But before we go any further, if there's one thing that you haven't seen already, whether it applies to you or not, is I am now offering account services for this game, whether it's in terms of playing things for you, sorting things out for you, general busy work, any of that sort of thing. The video link is in the description if you want to have a look over it there. But without wasting any more of your time in that regard, if this doesn't apply to you whatsoever, then let's get over to the actual video then, shall we? So this is the build we have for him. As you can tell, it's kind of a half and half between PvE and PvP because I only have one of them. Most people have none of them, so myself having one is pretty good in that regard. Actual stat-wise, he's okay-ish, I guess, if I just show you the pieces that he's got. I guess they're decent enough. Some of them could use a few improvements, but hey, unless you're going to spend way too much time on this game, you're not going to have everything perfect. So I'm working with what I have. Aren't we all? Right? So what we have for you is a bunch of live arena games. They are pre-recorded because audio was messed up because I was watching something in the meantime and forgot about it. So the first game that we picked Legate Teox in is because my opponent takes both Karnage and Warlord. Now both of these have pretty bad matchups into Legate Teox for their own reasons. Karnage obviously is red affinity, so her stun and her sleep can weak hit on him. And as for Warlord, sure, Legate Teox has no inherent actual defense against Lockout, but when his A1 also gets an ally attack from the ally with the next highest crit damage, this means you're able to fight into being locked out this way pretty well, especially when, if you look at the team that we either have Marias, who has an AoE A1 with the Enfeeble, Noxious, who has a stronger hitting single target that can put their skills on cooldown regardless, or Ankora, who has a chance of resetting, well, reducing one of our cooldowns. Now, obviously, our opponent is not particularly fast, as you saw, and doesn't know what Mariah's passive does. So this game is kind of over regardless of whether we pick Legate Teox or not, but it was a nice buffer to have. Now, going into the next game, once again, there's a Warlord, but this time around, we are picking Teox because he has a very good matchup into Harima. Once again, due to being strong affinity, and her having polymorph is pretty much useless against him because he doesn't place any debuffs in his kit. Now, Odin is a bit of a different story, and we are going into this without a reviver, so this could end up going potentially quite badly when we have a questionable amount of polymorph to try and fight Odin with, because both his A2 and A3 can be very strong, and well, we've never had much of a polymorph department. Now, as it stands, he was in 4-piece pinpoints, so the first time we would try and CC him, including polymorph, it's not going to work. But while the debuff lasts until spent, it can be removed. And in terms of removing things, Odin gets quite unlucky in terms of taking our stone skins off us. Our entire team's in it for a very good reason. Now, Narcissus was a 25% chance, everyone else was a 50%. But in terms of ourselves being locked out and not having to care about it too much, we are able to deal with the Harima quite nicely. Because the more we can set her back, the better, because she does scale up every time that she uses her A2. And when combined with the increased defense from Siphi, then, yeah. Now, regarding Siphi, she is in 9-piece protection, so Mikage is not particularly useful here. And this is why I don't like picking Mikage into Siphi too much, because protection set block debuffs means we can't remove it, and then we can't stun anyone regardless. So, and combined with how Warlord locked at her base form, and all Mikage is really doing here is pushing back a bit of turn meter. Now, since our opponent didn't feel lucky with removing the stone skin off UDK or hitting through reaction, if we do have it, they just A1 into our UDK with Odin, save the A3 for another point, because we only have one turn stone skin due to being stone skin bolster. Now, a lot of people will say bolster is kind of suicide in a Narcissus meta, but when we're first picking Narcissus every game, we don't have to worry about it too much. Now, in terms of leaving Harima sleeping for a turn, Siphi passive can wake her up, but it didn't happen this time, so we're able to just put damage on the Siphi some more first. We can now use the stun since the block debuff has fallen off. Harima polymorph does take place, but Mikage is not that great past this point, so being able to set them back once is fine. Warlord naturally hesitates regarding using the A2 because he's unsure about giving Narcissus the double hit on the A2, but Ancha goes for it. It does seem to save him for the most part because we have no faction unity bonuses for Teox whatsoever. Our Lizardmen aren't very great, so we are picking him more as a counterpick than as part of the Lizard strategy. But it turns out that increased defense is not going to save them, and now there's no more win condition, and my opponent has had enough of this. Now, for this next game, you're probably thinking this, and this is not a Teox game, and you would be correct, but this one is more... I also was expecting to see something happen with a Karnage here, but spoilers, nothing happens because it turns out that it is actually very hard for Karnage to exist around Marias. And you will find out in a moment after my opponent bans Rotos, which is the correct ban here, especially when they have counterpicked Tormin into what was our attempt at going first, because we saw these and weren't particularly too sure how to combat it. So first off, ourselves using the speed is fine because of our team's in Stone Skin. Tormin can't freeze anything yet, and we just put some damage on the Siphi. We hit into reaction, but Wukong is enfeebled, and Karnage's A1 does have Evil Eye, so once again he tripped Mariah's passive off of deterrence. That takes that, and he just kills himself completely automatically, which is really unlucky. Tormin is in Swift Parry for some reason, which is a very strange way to go about things. Tormin fails to remove any buffs off us because he doesn't have much accuracy, and the fight isn't over yet because Sun Wukong will keep resurrecting himself over and over. Does freeze our entire team. We try to lock out the monkey and it doesn't quite work. Second try, we try to stun him and we hit again. So things are looking a bit bad now, and does this for a lot of damage. Counter attack, and we just about managed to pull it through regarding the Narcissus skill. So next game we see Marichka, Harima, Siphi. We ban the armbands because we only pick 2 carries, and if they ban one then sheep the other. We are never going to have a win condition in this game. We also don't have Reviver because we picked the UDK because we're expecting to take Georgia Day 1 A3 at least once, and it's a pretty low chance to kill a high defense UDK because he has to hit both Helm Smasher and passive, which are both 50% chances. Otherwise we have enough defense that he is not going to be able to do this. Now obviously the other danger is Marichka ally attacks with Judged to delete someone through UDK, because UDK passive will only absorb the hit from Marichka. But our opponent seems kind of confident that we can not just wipe out everyone through the increased defense and not. Plarium passive is going to reduce Noxious damage somewhat. Now in terms of reducing damage, as you saw there, Judged hit straight into the reaction on UDK. He probably wasn't going to be able to kill regardless, but that's some of the danger taken off. And again, Siphi also can't do a whole lot here. She only has to A1 into the UDK. Now, going forwards, I think we're going to Marichka here, because if she dies first, then her revive isn't going to get any value whatsoever. We think about it for a moment and decide to go into Siphi instead. It turns out that either way we weren't going to be able to one-shot, so we just scale our increased attack off the Siphi. We get 30% per overall A2, and we are fully stacked twice. Now this is where we make a mistake. We completely forget that we don't have ankora, so we don't get the extra turn. We are visibly confused by that, and if you expected this to be a game loss as a result, then it kind of is. We're not too sure about what to do here. We think that we go before the Judged. We don't, and he proceeds to do terrible things to our entire team, including putting unkillable on himself, which we have no real way to deal with. Now, the reason we don't use UDK A2 here is because Marichka will just cleanse it off. We are able to clear all of these, and while her emit is permadeath, Siphi can just pick up the Marichka. 10 meters are pretty low, so obviously Marichka does this, gets a 50%, and you know what happens at that point. So that was completely our fault, but we did get a bit unlucky regardless, so there is that. All I can say is, remember what our skills do, and just be faster. So our opponent's last pick here is very interesting. Frasier Fate Weaver, with a 5-star blessing, so clearly not only have they done the Titan event, like I said, people will do it anyway, but they also went through all the effort to the path of a Fate Weaver to get a 5-star soul for her. Now, I know partially how this champion works, but not entirely. Her passive gives an instant turn if an ally would be defeated, and also heals them for somewhat. But if they get multiple hits all at once, then obviously we hit into reaction once, so Harima survives this way. But because she goes before the rest of the team, it's a bit hard for her to actually use her skills in the correct order when Crixia is still yet to move. Now Crixia, like Warlord, has the same issue with the Teox, where sure, you lock me out, but I can still fight, and there's no more Frasier passive to save them. Now, we did pick the Pythion in terms of he's in immunity and stone skin, so he's anti-bomb, anti-gizmak to an extent. Now, the Frasier does a lot more damage than we expected, so it seems our opponents put their best gear on her. Her A1 has I think it's a 2.6x defense multiplier, and can scale up to 3.9 because she can gain up to 50% extra base defense. So that is actually very strong for an A1. We think about what to do. We weak hit because Crixia is immune to stun in her base form and sleep in her alt form, so we try to sleep her. We know that Frasier is protected over Crixia in terms of ankora passive. The A2, I disagree with doing that there. I think she should have alt formed and tried to reset cooldown otherwise to protect the team, because putting block buffs on me here doesn't do a whole lot. Now, as you saw, Frasier is hitting pretty hard, and Mikage is counterable, but she's not overly tanky, so being 2 hit there is possible. Now, now she resets the cooldown, which is a bit of a strange choice when Ankora's turn meter is very low. So just to get her out of the way in case anything else interesting happens, we do that. Freyja has no chance of surviving this, and we just try and save a one-shot. We come very close, we don't quite manage it. We just pick up the Mikage, and there is no way for my opponent to win this game at this point. So they do pick him up, but we're going to push turn meters back by 30% with their 2, and that is that. And this is one that really showcases how skewed the Teox Harima matchup is in Teox's favour. If they are both of these solo carries in the match and everyone else is relegated to a support role, or they literally are just a support champion. So my opponent sensibly bans Noxious because not only is it very easy for Noxious to simply just permadeath for Harima when she has 3 buffs on her, but Mithrola can't use her A3 if there's the guy who harshly punishes shield and strengthen. So initially our idea is to keep knocking down Harima over and over, knowing that she can't scale up if she's dead, and Sippy has to keep trying to revive her on the 3 or 4 turn cooldown. Now we do take the increased defense off her immediately, so that she can't do more damage to Mikage, which would just put pressure on Ankora to keep her alive. We don't have to worry too much about Teox for the time being because he's strong affinity. And this is one thing that we can do now we've got Mikage alt form, is Teox can ally attack, and since Mikage is our next highest, she will always join in and sleep them and cut back their turn meter. Now, my opponent does have 2 block debuffs and also a cleanse, so we're not going to rely too much on landing anything from Mikage. So this really is more just hopefully scale up with Teox and eventually overwhelm them. Try and get our cooldowns back however we can, and a lot of what we're going to do is not going to be that helpful, whether it's Mithrola poisons, Warlock trying to extend debuffs if his A1 because not going to be too many rounds, or Civi trying to sleep someone, because this UDK is going to be kept alive very handily in terms of Civi passive heals, Warlord A3, A2 heals, and anything else that they have. Now, if they do have block debuffs off them, we will just try to stun them. Mithrola obviously is going to have more resistance than we have accuracy if we aren't buffing our accuracy first with the A2. Now we do try the A3 here. It does not do anywhere near as much damage as we'd have liked, so that was kind of a mistake and we should have just scaled up with the A2 first, but we had to try and decide now they know what's up, or better yet, they might think that our Teox is not very well geared and won't be able to kill them. Now, the first A3 empowered by the increased defense does not weak hit, so Teox definitely goes down from that because we don't have his passive that will give him 50% DR against enemies under debuffs, especially if not under debuffs in the first place. The provoke seems to not even land the turn meter decrease, which is unfortunate. And we're going to put damage on the Civi here because we don't rate our chances of clearing through the Harima, and yeah, 45k, pretty decent damage, but we are in a rush to try and get this done quickly. Not going to bother shielding because we want to try and fish for another A2 on Teox. And locked out again. Our turn meters are getting pretty low, which does look kind of hazardous, but we do have Mikage's form back, and Harima frustratingly lives on very little HP. If we had a bit better in terms of gearing, then it would be fine, but Harima loses her turn here because she's about to take it, but Teox takes it first. And Ankora is petrified, but she will cleanse that and increase your turn meter by 50%. And we don't have a great move here because Makage's A1 is not going to do a whole lot when we don't have any Shadok here. Granted, if we ever got someone like Onryo Ayasu, then he would be very good here. And we think what to do here for a moment. We figure, just go for AoE again, put damage on them. Do we shield? No, we don't shield. We try and get a cooldown back. We get one on UDK, which is pretty worthless, but better than not getting anything at all. And now they have nothing to do for, I believe, 3 turns, because Siffy has no offensive prowess, neither does anyone else. Unless Mithril is going to try and poison us down. But by this point, you can tell that we have skilled up and it's looking very bad for our opponent. Mikage finishes off the hill and there is no win condition for our opponent at all. Now, the last game, I want to show this one, even though it's not going to feature Legate Teox, but just how sometimes you'll win or lose games depending on luck as opposed to actual skill. Because Live Arena is a game mode where you can lose games because your opponent got lucky or you got unlucky, but you can't really win them because there's already a correct move to make and you're just making it and you're just hoping it works or not. So the counterpick Torment is very troublesome here because we know they're going to ban our Ankora, and while we do have Stone Skin on Marias and Narcissus, we don't have it on Monkey, and we are looking at an Odin and a 6-star Alaz, who, if he does take a turn, things are going to find their way back to the matchmaking screen because we have no real way to defend against that. So the Hail Mary is to immediately try and boost turn meter, and we figure that we might as well just use A2 here instead of A3 because otherwise what happens at A3 is we're either going to fail to remove a polymorph, the Stone Skin, or we're going to get polymorphed off it. But removing the Alaz for a turn is the best choice because Sheep can't be blocked. Now the ally attack does take out shoes in here. The buffs happen before the Stone Skin falls off, so we are able to buff up safely. We resolve this because we have nothing stopping us anymore and the game is over. But realistically, we won that on a 30% chance because Sun Wukong got a buff from the Shuzen in terms of the turn meter. But really, that game was more luck than actual skill. Like, sure, I did the correct move, but for all intents and purposes, it probably shouldn't have worked. Anyway, so that's a bit of a Legate Teox showcase in Live Arena. Obviously, it is gold 3, it's not gold 4. Gold 4 is too hard for me. There's a reason why most people don't try, because all that happens if I go into gold 4 is I go against Commodus or Gizmak, who are in pinpoint. I have no way to defend against them, and I lose in 5 seconds every time until I'm back into gold 3 once again. But yeah, that's all. So until next time, see ya.